Hello guys, welcome back. In today's video, we're going to be learning how to create HTML tables. And what are tables? Tables are used to organize and display information in a structured format of rows and columns. And you've probably seen tables used for things like students' records, product lists, schedules, pricing plans, statistics on many websites. And even to add to that, salary structures for those of you that have varieties of jobs that you do for a living. And in HTML, tables are built using special tags like table tag, the TR tag, which stands for table row, the TH stands for table header, and the TD for the table data cells. And these tags helps us to define the structure of our tables. And in this video, I'm going to show you how to create a table from scratch, how rows and columns works, and how rows and columns work, and how to properly structure your table using HTML. And by the end of this lesson, you're going to be able to confidently build your own HTML tables for web pages. All right, let's get started. Alright guys, welcome back. So to create our table in HTML, we're going to be using the table tag. And this table tag is going to serve as the container that is going to wrap all our table items inside our table. That's all the information, all the elements that we need for our table. And the elements that we need for our table are such as table head, footer, body, with the table rows, and then the table data and other items. So we're going to start with, or probably the caption, and the caption serves as the table description. So the first thing I'm going to have to do is to describe or give a title to my table using the caption tag. So that's it. And I'm going to, let's say the table I want to create is about student records. That's student information. So I'll probably name it something like student records. Student records. There we have it. And the next thing I'm going to create is I'm going to divide our table into three parts, which is the header, footer, and the body. So although having header, footer, and body is not really necessary for our table, but I'm just going to show you how it works. So our table headers are going to be wrapped by our table head. So on the table head is denoted with the TH tag. So I'm going to be writing our table head tag. And our table head is going to be wrapping different items such as our table rows and cells. Our table row is TR, and this table row is going to be wrapping probably, let's say, 5 cells, which is our TH, our table headers. Our table headers are different from table head. Table headers are just like how we have header 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So, but then this just meant to be the informations that is meant to be displayed at the head of our table, which is the table head of our table. So it's meant to appear in a header form. So this is why we use table headers. And right now I need 3 cells for it. So I'll just multiply this by 5. Sorry about that. I'll multiply our headers by 5. There we have it. So the information I'm going to be needing is probably serial number, and next is going to be name, the student's name, since it's a student record. And I'll be needing let's say their age, their department, and lastly their age. Okay, so after creating this is our table head. We'll go ahead and also create our table body, which is the T body tag. And this T body tag, I probably want it to have like 5 rows. This table is going to wrap the contents, the information that are meant to correspond with our table head. So here I'm going to be creating like 3 rows. I'm going to be creating like 3 rows, which is going to also wrap different cells. So I'm going to be using TD. TD stands for table data, which is also a different type of cell, except that you use it for table body and our table footer. And here, since I have 5 cells or 5 columns, I'll be creating 5 cells for it, which is why I'm going to multiply it by 5. And there we have it for all. Now we have 3 rows, row 1 with 5 table data, row 2 with 5 table data, and row 3 with 5 table data. So this is what I'm going to do. What I have to go ahead and do is I'll start keying information like this serial number 1, okay, and name is Choma, then age is 24, department is I'm an engineer, so I'm going to just use engineering, and then the last one is meant to be gender, so I'm female. So sorry about that, I think I made a mistake on the table head here, so I'm going to change this to gender. Okay, so there we have it. And as you can see, our work is looking so clustered around here. You can't even know which one, you can't even differentiate which one from which. So I'm going to go ahead and add an attribute called border for our table. And it's going to create a border for our tables. Okay, there we have it. And I've actually set a figure to 3 to tick in the outer border. All right, this is cool.
Additionally, we can actually add an attribute called cell padding. If you look at our text boxes, you see that everything is too um, clustered. So you can just add cell padding just to add spaces around the text in our cells. So that's just what I wanted to share with you. So let's proceed. Five is cool.
So I'll go ahead and keep filling our table. So back to our second row, we have serial number 2, and here probably we have a student named Bob, and Bob might actually be, let's say, 19 years old. And Bob's department, let's say Bob is a medical student, so I'll just use med, and Bob is male by gender, and then we'll go to the next row. Number 3, I start filling in one after the other. We have Frank, and Frank probably is a law student. Okay, let's say Frank is 21 years old, and Frank is a law student, and his gender is male. And that's it. We've created our table body. So we'll go ahead and create another item called our table footer. And table footers are used to collect our summaries for our table. So this table footer is going to serve as a container that's going to wrap all the cells, all the cell contents or row contents for our footer of the footer of our table. So here I may be needing one row. In your case, you may create as many as much as rows possible that you may be needing, but here I just need one row, which is going to give birth to, which is going to be nesting two table cells. So I'm just going to multiply the cells by 2, and there we have it. So we have 2 cells, and here the summary I need is just the total number of students, and we have just 3. So as you can see, if you look at our table, you see that the whole thing didn't correspond to our table. Here we just need some items here to fill it to make our table to look well structured. But then to do this, we're going to be spanning these 2 cells to stretch across the extreme part of this table. And to do that, we'll be using the attributes called call span. And to do that, we'll come to our first cell, which is total, and I'm going to write the call span attributes. And I want it to span the first, second, and third cells or third columns. So I'm going to write 3. So it's going to span 1, 2, and 3. So the same way, I also want this other cell to span like 2 columns. So I'm just going to copy this, and I'm going to paste it here. So I've pasted it, but it cannot exceed this table. So I'll just take it as 2. It's going to span 2 columns, okay? So that's just it. But in some situations, if you had used a figure above this, for example, let's say this was not this only spanned, like this does not have a particular figure for the span. In some tables, if you create some tables and you decide to add a call span, you will notice like a call span way above the table cells in general. For example, I have like 1, 2, 3, 4 here. Unless I want to span this by 5, in some tables it's going to create an extra space above, but not in everybody's device. So let's see if this is going to work. Okay, it didn't work out, so it's only spanned 4. So but some people may experience this in their own situation, because I've done this multiple times on different devices. So whenever I span my columns to probably something way above or something exceeding the size of my table columns, it usually creates a separate column on the side. So I'm just going to leave this at 2 here, and then so I'm going to leave it at 3. Okay, so now we have our table looking fit and well structured. Now there's also something else you can do. You can go ahead and resize our table width and height. So for example, if I set my table width to probably, let's say, 100%, is going to stretch across the whole screen. Now look at it. Despite the screen size, if I still use a smaller screen size, it's going to stretch across. If I still use a very large screen size that is way more larger than my laptop, it's still going to stretch across the whole screen. So that's what this is for in percentages. So you can also measure it in pixels too. Okay, although percentages are way more larger than pixels, so you can actually size them in pixels. Maybe I'll just use 300 pixels for my table. Okay, now this size is okay. So the same way, I can also attach a height to my table, a table height, using both pixels and percents to size them. So probably let's try if I use 100%, it's going to stretch it down vertically below the whole screen, take over the whole screen. But then I'll just want to use pixels to measure it. So I'm going to use 500 pixels. And let's see how it looks. Oh, this is way more longer than expected. So I think I'm gonna go back to, let's say, 200. 200 is okay. Okay, this is cool, right? I can still take it back to 100. Okay, this is still cool, but let's just leave it at, let's say, 150 pixels. Okay, this is also better. And if you want to put, or let's say place our table or center our table, we can use the center tag. So here we have the center tag, and as usual, I'm gonna have to use this to wrap the table. So I'll just go down below and place the closing tag right here. Okay, so we centered our table. Now I've centered our table. There are also different things that we can do to our table to beautify it, starting with the border. Now, if you look at our border, we can actually decide to add a border color. By default, everything is black, but we can add a border color by using this border color attributes, and we can actually turn it to, let's say, something like red. Let's look at it. Now, our border color has changed to red. And if we also want to add a background color, we can use the attribute called style. Style is actually like an inline CSS. We're going to grasp the whole concept about styles when we start learning CSS. So you can just add styles here. You can just add styles, attributes, style, and then how do we want to style it? We're going to have to add a property such as, let's say, background color. Let's say background color. So we want our background color. Now we have to attach a value for this property. What color do we want it to have? So let's probably say we want it to have an aqua color. Let's see how it's going to transform. And yes, we've transformed our table background color. All right. So the same way, if you also want to add a text color, you just come at the end here, because if you look at our styling comes in our style. When we have it, when we use the style attributes in quotations, we're going to have a property which is our background color, which is going to be separated with a column, and with this column we'll attach our value, and then we'll close it with a semicolon. Okay, so we're going to be attaching our next content, which is probably I want you to have a text color, so we use the color property. And what color property do we need? Write our column, and then probably want our text color to transform to, let's say, let me say, let's try pink. Use pink, and I'm going to close it with a semicolon. You see our text colors have changed to pink. Okay, so but then let's use a different color to make it more shouty. Let's go with green. Let's see how it's going to look. Green. Okay, green is not really shouty. Okay, this color. Okay, blue is way more bold, so which is cool. So you can also align our text center. So I'll also go to the end here. Go to the end of our color, and I'm going to add something like text align. Text align, it can either be start, end, left, right, whatever. So I'll be using center. Okay, so that's it. Now text has now be displayed in the middle as the center of our tables. So there are many other things that you can do with our table. You can style it different ways. Now for our border, if you notice, our cell has each different borders for all of them, has border is surrounded with borders for each of them, and then there is a gap around them. But if you do not want this gap, and probably want the border to stick to the table or get attached to the table, this is where border collapse comes in. So still go to our style attributes, and we're going to add another property called border collapse. So add border collapse. I want to add border collapse. We're still going to attach a value for it too, which is collapse. Okay, so there we go. By default it was separated, so let's just take it back to separate and see how it's going to look. Now everything is separated, but if you take it back to collapse, it is going to be collapsed. Now it's going to stretch and attach itself to the actual table border. So there we have it. We can actually decide to change the border color, whatever. Okay, we've actually changed the border color, so let's get back to business. I'm going to introduce it to quite few more tags called the core group, and I'm going to introduce it to what this core group is used for. So this core group can be written before our head tag or probably before our body tag, but then it's best advice or it's best practice to use our core group tags before our head tag. So this core group tag is a container that is going to be wrapping our column tags. So I'm going to be writing our core tag here. So what is it for? Core tag is a self-closing tag, but this is where we're going to attach our styles, our styling for our columns. Now, since I have only one column here, it's only going to represent this first column right here. This first column here. If I want to add, let's say, additional edits or styling to these other columns, I'm also going to write down different core tags. For example, let's start here. Let's style our our first column, probably the text color, the background color. So let's start with style, and probably want something like background color. Let's start with the background color, and let's say we want our background to have a, let's say, bisque color. You see that everything here is going to transform to bisque. So the same way, if I want to start the second column, I have to create another core tag here too. I have to create another core tag, and I'm still going to add another style to it. So let's just copy this. I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to have to paste it right here, and I'm going to select a different color for it. So let's go with this. Let's see how it looks. Okay, now it looks different. So that's just it. So the same way, if we still want to add other color items, blah blah blah, it's your choice. So what I'm going to do is, in situations where I don't want to keep adding call tags for each colors, like call one, one, two, three, four, five. Like if you don't want to add five calls, and situations whereby you just want a particular column to have the same effect as the first column or the previous column before it, you have to use the attribute called span. And to do that, let's say for example, this second call here, I want this third column to also have the same color. So I'm going to add the span here after adding our style. So I'm going to span it to 2. Okay, so it's going to have the same color, the same effect. If I still take it to 3, it's going to attach the same effect, is going to get attached to the third column. So that is it. So the same way, if you still want to, now the reason why we use this call group is if you look at our table head, each TH, TDs, and everything inside our rows are all columns. So let's say the first cells for each rows here forms a column. Okay, so for example, if I have, let's copy this for example. If I wanted a big background, I'm going to copy this style in here. I'm going to copy this, and let's say this is column, for this first row, this is column 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And let's say we want to work on, I'm going to take this back to 2. Okay, so let's say we want to work on the last column, which is gender here. I can't keep styling, attaching this style for our last. I can't keep going to each cells to attach this style for each. Sorry, this style for each of them when I want all the columns here to have the same background color. So the easiest way to just do it is to go back um, to my call group and create a call for it, and then just add the edit, and I can also choose to span it across whichever columns I want it to span across to. So that's just it. So the same way, if you also want to add colors to your footer, you can also go to your footer and add different background colors. Or let's try our head. Let's say I want our header to have a different background color, so I'm going to add the styling here. So the background color right here is basic background color. This probably I don't want it to have this basic as its background color. Okay, probably want something like sorry about that. Okay, style, background color, uh background color, let's say pink. Say pink, let's see how it goes. Oh, I'm so sorry. The reason why this is not taking effect is because this is the closing tag for our table head. Okay, so I'm going to have to go to the opening tag right here. So let's say for our table header, I want to add a background color such as pink. I have to just paste this background color property, and then I'm going to change my value to pink. So I'm going to select any color of my choice. So there we have it. So if you also want our footer to have different color, you can work on that, make different transformations. And if I decide I want my header to have a different text color, I can also go ahead and proceed to adding items like something like I'll add color, and then probably my text color should be, let's say, yellow, and there we have it. So that's it. So in cases where I don't want your border to be there, you can just remove this border attribute, then instead you style it with color. You use background colors for each columns in case you don't use border lines for everything. So the same way you can also add border lines to your footer, whatever border color. And again, for a border here, for a border, and in situations whereby you do not want to have borders, or probably you don't have border around your table, you can actually use the call group to differentiate each columns with different color codes. Also, for our border, there's also a different way to add borders to our tables, which is if you don't want to have this border tree here. For example, if I'm going to delete this, or probably let me not delete it, I'm going to create a border for let's go to our footer and add a border. So another way to do that is also using the style attribute. So I'm going to be pasting our style here, but then I don't want it to have this color. I don't want to work on the background color. So what I want to work on is the border. So I'll have to write border. So for our border, we can actually use border top, border left, border right, and border bottom, or border width, whatever we're working on. But I'm working generally on the borders. Okay. So let's say, for example, I just want to work on the border top, for example. So I'll just use border top, and I'm going to attach the value to these properties, such as I want the thickness to be 1 pixels, and I also want it to be solid. And then I'm going to select my color, probably let's try white and see if it's going to take any effects. Okay, Let's not use border top. Let's try something like border. Okay, let's try changing it to red. Let's see if there's going to be any difference. Okay, now as you can see, the effect is only taking place around this area here. Okay, it's only taking place around this area here. So I think maybe if I change it to white back again, let's see if it's still going to give us the same color. Or let's go with green, something that's going to be very much obvious. Now if you look closely around here, you see that our border here has changed to green. That's you want to demarcate it a different color. All right, so something else, there's something else I also wanted to introduce you to. Let's make this way more thicker. Let's say 3 pixels, so it's going to look more obvious. Okay, so it has taken, okay, why it was not showing before is because this border here was thicker than it, so it couldn't be displayed. So that's it. So now that I've made it more thick, I can see the differences. So if I still change it to white, it's still going to turn to white or something closer. If you still change it to pink, still going to get transformed to pink, whichever color we decide to set it to. Okay, so that is just how it works. So you can actually do this bow with your border top, border bottom, or whatever you want or you wish to do with it, or whichever property you decide to attach to it. So now for borders, our border can come in solid form, and it can come in dotted form, and it can come in dashed form. So let's try the dotted form so you can see how it looks. So when we turn our border, when we switch our border to be dotted, you see that everything is going to be dotted. And if we take it down to change it to dashed form, it's going to be dashed. So we'll just leave it as solid, which is also good looking. So there we have our table. All right, so there's also something different I'm going to show you about our footer. Our footer can either be placed below our body tag or above our body tag, but it's still going to show the same effect. So I'm going to cut this off right here. Now we no longer have our footer here. So despite where I'm going to place it being on top of our body tag right here, it's still going to be rendered at the bottom of our table or the footer of our table because this is actually a footer. So right, I've placed it, as you can see, I'll have our total, I'll have our figure down there. So no much difference. Now, this place I placed is actually the best practice to, or should I say the best place to place our footers. This is like the best practice for placing footers on our tables, and I'm going to explain why. Let's say ignore the fact that our table here is kind of like short or it's like small. And in cases where we'll have a bigger table, like let's say a table that has like up to 100 or 1000 rows on the page. I'm going to give you an example. So as for this footer, it is actually of best practice to place it above our table body because in cases whereby we have tables that have like let's say 100 or probably 1000 rows and probably similar cells or columns, and then we place it on our page, our laptop might as well as hang. Well, I'm going to show you a more visual approach. So what I have to do is I'm going to create a different table. Okay, so I have to go down below here, or probably I'm going to have to add breaks. Okay, and then I'll come here and I'm going to create a new table tag. I'm going to create a new table. And this table is going to have something like T head. It's going to have something like T body, T body, and it's also going to have T footer. And let's say I want my T footer to come before T body, so I'm going to add T foot, and these are sisters. Okay. Now our T head is going to have, let's say, something like one row. Okay, it's going to have one row, of which this row is going to have like let's say five cells. It's going to have 5 cells. So I'm going to times it by 5. Okay, and I want it to have text contents like probably header 1, header 2, header 3, header 1, header 2, header 3, something like that. So there we have it. And now we have our T foot. There's also going to have one table row, which is going to give birth to probably let's say 2 footers, like let's say something like let's say something like it's going to have a text with 2 footers, right? It's going to have a text such as sorry, let's say total, sum, and then sum 1 and sum 2. Okay, so I'll just add this number, and then I'm going to stretch this so that you can see very well. Then for our table body, let's say we want our table body to have 10 rows. So I'm going to have my rows times 10. Okay, and then I'm going to have my table cells, which is my TD multiplied by 5, which are going to have text content such as, let's say, cell 1, cell 2 to whatever. So there we have it. I've created our table. So we have cell 1, cell 2, cell 3, cell 4, cell 5, just like that for each of them. So I'm going to go ahead and add, and I'm going to go ahead and add a border. Okay, and I'll probably use 2. Okay, so there we have our table header, and if you go down, you're supposed to have a footer. So we have T foot. Okay. So one and some. Okay, these are footer, right? Yes. So these are footer and these are code 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, we have 10 rows for our table. So in this table, let's assume that we have 1,000 rows or 100 rows. You know that it will be too much. It will be too much for our screen. Like it might actually make my laptop to hang. It might make my laptop to hang. But in situations like that, I would actually place my footer before the body, because I would want my browser, when rendering this page on the browser, I would want it to read the header and footer for which are the most important items. In cases whereby my table informations are way much longer, of which, yes, if they're way much longer, I'm going to have to stick with a second option, which by paginating it using JavaScript, but we're not learning JavaScript right now, so we just have to, stick to HTML. So I'm just going to explain it for you to understand. Pagination works in, let me say, similar to something we've actually experienced when we want to go on the internet to download a music or a movie. Probably you go to the internet to search something like 2026 movies, and probably there are different varieties of movies. In fact, the list is very stretched, it's very long, there are plenty, and it can't just display all the movies on the screen, all the videos on the screen for you to select which one you want to download. So what we have to do is, if you notice on the screen, you see something at the bottom like um, um, page 1, 2, 3, 4, then probably see 100, and at the extreme of at the extreme sides of the pages you see something like back or next, or probably previous or next, something like that. So that's called pagination. The whole movie set we are being paginized. So let's say we have like 1,000 movies. You see that it's going to, each page is going to display 100 movies per, or let's say we have 100 movies, each page is going to display like 10 movies per page. So you have to keep scrolling through 10 movies like on each pages. So that is how that's actually the best. That's how pagination actually works. So let's say we have a table that have 1,000 rows and probably want to display like 100 rows per page. We'll paginize it, but then while paginizing it, you see that having placed our T foot above our T table is going to make the browser to know that, yes, to render the footer of the page on our screen for each pages. So for example, if I move to page 1, I'm still going to see my header and my footer. If I move to page 2, I'm still going to see my header and my footer. So the same way, instead of me waiting till reaching the last page before I see my footer. Okay, so that's why it's very important to place this T foot above your T body. So this is just what it does, so that on each page you'll be able to know that, yes, okay, the sum total is this, sum total of this table is this. You're already getting the information. You don't have to stress yourself to get to the last page before you grasp the actual information that you need as the summary or the table footer. So that's just it. So you can either place it above or below. So that is it. So we've come to the end of our session for our HTML tables. So
So now that we are done with our table, let's take a quick recap. So today we've taken another step forward in your web development journey, and in this video we broke down how to create tables, how to add rows and columns, and span them and structure data properly using HTML. So the more you practice these basics, the stronger your foundation becomes. So right now I believe that I trust that you can confidently display organized data on your web page. And if you found this video helpful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more web development tutorials. I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.